job, worship team. These guys are so good. I want to be like you when I grow up. Christina's just hoping I'll grow up. Good morning. Good morning. You guys wide awake?
Yes.
Yeah, everybody had a good time 4th of July, hung out with family. Hopefully, you got a chance to blow some stuff up. It's the most American way to celebrate, right? America, let's blow things up, yeah! I know. It was fun. We had a good time, had a good day. It was a beautiful night last night. Man, just such a good night to sit out and hang out together. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be exploring a little bit of a series. I'm calling it the third way. I'm calling it the third way. You guys ever heard the phrase, the lesser of two evils? Yes. Right? And we feel like that sometimes. Sometimes we feel like we're faced with a choice or we're faced with a dilemma and we have to pick the lesser of two evils. I'd like to vote once in my life and not feel that way. I'm just saying. You know, we often feel that way in life where there is just not good. What do I do? I don't want to really go. This lesser of two evils. But I firmly believe that as Christians, we never have to choose the lesser of two evils. That there is a third way. There's a third way. And we're going to see all throughout Scripture in several different places where people are presented with seemingly two bad options, and they're fully convinced they have to choose one of these two options, but Christ comes along, God comes along and exposes that there's a third way. There's another way. There's something else. There's a different choice that we can make. In early Christianity, in the first few hundred years after the New Testament, Christianity began to really explode and grow. And culturally, it was a phenomenon. They had no idea what to do with Christianity. The Romans had no category for it. The Jews weren't quite sure what to do with it. So they just didn't know where to put these people because they didn't fit into any of the preconceived categories. In fact, Rome, there's a letter, the first time the Christians are called, they weren't called the third way, it was like the third family or the third people group. This is not an exact translation for the word they use. But there was a Roman ruler who sent a letter to a local ruler, said, tell me about these Christians. I'm hearing rumors of this new group that's growing. Tell me who they are. And the guy wrote back, he's like, that's a good question. We're trying to figure that out, basically. He says, they're not like anybody we've ever encountered. They're different. And he calls them a third family or a third people. A different people that's unlike anyone else around. He said in the Jews, see, the culture of the Jews of that time was fairly isolationist in that everything they did was very much isolated around their own culture. They ate their own foods, they did business with their own people, they spoke their own language, they pulled out of the broader society and they were their own thing, totally different from everything else. And they did not, as little as possible, they did not interact with the others, with everyone else. On the opposite side, you had the pagans who were fully engaged in everything that there was in culture. They were on all of the gods. They worshipped whatever new god came around. We see that in Athens, right? Oh, there's an unknown god. We're just going to set this idol. We don't even know who he is, but sure, we'll bring him in too. And they fully engaged in everything the culture threw at them, and they jumped all in on it. And this guy's trying to explain to the ruler, the Roman ruler, he's like, they're not either one of these. These Christians, they don't do what we do. They don't engage with everything that we are. They're definitely not like us. But they're not like the Jews either. They don't isolate and they're not separate from. In fact, they're very involved. They care for the sick. They're involved in serving everybody. They're everywhere. They're constantly engaged in culture. And so he didn't know where to put them. They weren't fully in, but they weren't fully out. They were this third way. This different kind of people. And I love that. I love that idea that we are not isolationists. We are not of the world, but we still exist in it. We are still salt and light in the midst of it. This idea of what does it mean to be a third way, to be a third type of people. Today I want to talk about the storm of life, the storms of life. How many guys have recognized that our world's a little weird right now. Anybody else recognize that, or is that just me? Right? Our world's a little crazy right now, isn't it? I mean, you've got all kinds of crazy going on right now. You've got the COVID crazy going on right now. You've got political crazy going on right now. You've got civil crazy going on right now. Some of y'all got crazy in your family going on right now. Financial crazy going on right now. Kanye West just declared he's running for president. Not even joking. Add that to your list of crazy. We were talking, he'll probably get some votes too. It's a crazy world. Every day is a new crazy. Every day is a new storm. Every day is and I feel like in our culture, there is this unrest, this angst. And how people respond to that is usually one of two ways. There's one of two ways. If you look at your friends and yourself, I think all of us are prone to respond to this one of two ways. Oh, hi to Facebook too. All right. One of the two ways, I got to say hi to Facebook. I got to give a shout out to them. There's one or two ways, especially on Facebook. Y'all know on Facebook we react like this. How many of you guys know some people, when life goes crazy, they react in anger? They try to control. They try to control. And they try to control through anger. They try to control through fear. They try to say, everything is crazy right now, so I have to respond. And there's this lashing out, this anger, in a sense of trying to control the others. You ever post something and somebody responds back to you? You're like, whoa, where did that come from? Right? You hit a sore spot and suddenly they're just like, bleh! And there's like verbal vomit on your, Some people react that way. I think some of us maybe, when life gets crazy, we get angry, we get fearful, we try to control, we try to dominate, we try to somehow take back what we fear we're losing. We're like, ah. That's one way people respond. On the other side, I think there's people that respond in apathy. Life's crazy. Life's insane. This is too much. I don't even care. I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to talk to anybody. I'm not going to watch anything. I'm just going to totally disconnect. I am out. I'm just going to watch Netflix all day long and silly cat videos on the internet, and I'm done. Right? There's people, sometimes we want to do that. It's so overwhelming. We're like, I can't handle it. I can't fix it. I can't control it. I don't know what to do with it, so I am just going to walk away, pretend like it doesn't exist. Maybe some of us feel like that now. Maybe we have friends that are like that. When the going gets tough, the tough go in high. That's their mentality. They're just like, no, I'm done with this. I'm out of here. I don't think God has called us to anger or fear in the midst of the storms. And I don't think God has called us to run, to hide, to get apathetic, and to totally disengage either. Neither one of these options are the options that as Christians we are called to respond as. So I want to talk today about a third way. A third way of how we respond. A third way of peace. If you got your Bibles, open up to Mark 4. Mark 4, we're going to start at verse 31. We're going to talk about a couple of stories today you're familiar with, stories you have heard, and maybe we'll see them in a little bit of a different light today, but we're going to start at Mark 4:35. It says, as evening came, Jesus says to his disciples, let's cross to the other side of the lake. And so they took Jesus in the boat, and they started out leaving the crowds behind, although other boats followed. Now that's going to be interesting, because when I read something like that, like, why is that in there? Why did they add that? It's not necessary to the story, but it's there for a reason. Could you imagine being on the other boats as you experience this story? But soon a fierce storm came up. High waves were breaking into the boat, and it began to fill with water. Jesus was sleeping at the back of the boat with his head on a cushion.
Amen.
Now, here's another random little detail. Why did they tell us his head's on a cushion? I don't know. Maybe that was important somehow. I have no idea why Mark had to tell us that Jesus' head was on a cushion. But he is comfy. Maybe that's why he's comfy. He's chilling, right? He's sleeping. The storm is there. It's raging. It's insane. It's coming over the boats. The boats that I've seen from that era, I don't know, maybe there's probably some I haven't seen, but all the ones that I've seen that we know of from that region and that era were like really big canoes. They would fit 12 people maybe, something like that, right? They're large canoes. There's not a below deck. There's not like a sheltered area. So when Jesus is sleeping, he's just like laying there in the middle of the boat, sleeping, and they're all running around going crazy. Waves are coming in. He's probably soaking wet. His cushion pillow is probably soaking wet. But he's laying there. He's still asleep, right? The disciples woke him up, shouting, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown?" Holler out to him. Next verse. 39. When Jesus woke up, he rebuked the wind and the waves. Silence, that means peace. Be still. And suddenly the wind stopped, and there was a great calm. And he looked at them and he asked them, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" And the disciples were absolutely terrified. It's interesting, it says that they were afraid of the storm, but as they began to recognize who Jesus was, it says that they were terrified. There's like this whole other level of, whoa. They were terrified. Who is this man? They asked each other that even the wind and the waves obey him. This is a fascinating story on a number of levels. One, I don't know if you realize this, but I believe that Jesus set up this moment on purpose. He's the one that suggested they go out in the boat, right? He knew the storm was coming. He knew it was going to happen. He's like, "Hey guys, it's a good time to get in the boat." Anybody like sail or you're on a boat, you ever like look at the weather app and you're like, "Oh, there's a storm coming." It's a good time to go sailing. Now's a good time to just for all of us in a little dinghy and float out to the middle of the water. This is a great idea. But Jesus, knowing the storm was coming, knowing what was about to happen, looks at his disciples and says, "It's a good time to get in the boat. Let's go for a ride to the other side of the lake. I'm going to take a nap. Good luck." Right? So he gets in and he takes off. And Jesus puts them into the situation. I think one of the reasons why he does this is a fulfillment of, I don't want to call it a prophecy, but it is one of those evidences to them and their culture that he is more than just a prophet. He is more than just a good teacher. He is more than just an incredible spiritual guru, that he is God himself. Let me show you why I think this was an evidence to them that Jesus was God. Look at Psalms 107, verses 28 through 30. Psalms 107, verse 20 through 30. "Lord, help," they cried in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. He calmed the storm to a whisper, and he stilled the waves. What a blessing it was, that stillness, as he brought them safely to harbor. That's a fulfillment right there, right? In Psalms, we see them crying out to God, "God, would you still the storm?" And only God can still the storm. Only God has control over the wind and the waves. There is no great man who can do that. In Psalms it says, "And God came, God stilled the storms, God stilled the waves." And Jesus sets them up to be in a position where they can see him not only for what they hope him to be in terms of Messiah, but they can see him as he is, that he is God in flesh, in the boat, and he's with them. So Jesus is setting them up very intentionally for this moment, I believe. A couple of things I want to talk about in this story as we move forward here. The theme that I want you to pick up is this, that peace in the midst of the storm is the Christian's response to chaos. Amen. Peace in the midst of the storm is the Christian response to chaos. And that is not an easy thing, but God shows us how this happens. First is this, Jesus, the reason he could sleep through the storm is because what everybody else feared, he was not afraid of because he knew the outcome. Jesus put them in this position. He knew how he was going to get them out of this position. He wasn't worried one bit. He knew how it all ended. And so he had no fear. In the midst of the storm, why do we fear? Why do we run? Why do we get a sense of internal? When the external chaos rages, why is there an internal chaos that wants to match it? Because we don't know how it's going to end. We don't know how it's going to turn out. And so we're afraid. We don't know how to control it, and so we run. Jesus knew how this was going to end. He knew he was going to do it, so he took a nap. He's like, let me know when you need me. I'll be in the back. When you know how it ends, you have peace in the process, even when it gets crazy. It's a beautiful thing about a good eschatology, right? A good theological, godly, biblical understanding of how it all ends is that even in the midst of the chaos, we know how it ends. We know that ultimately God wins. But it's getting crazy. Yeah, read Revelations. It gets crazier. It gets crazier. These are, the Bible calls it the labor pains. But we know how it ends. We know that in the midst of the pain, there's something new that God is doing. We can have peace in the storm like Jesus had peace. We can relax in the chaos. Amen. Because we know how it ends. We have peace. Next thing I want to point out is he called them out for having such little faith. And this is interesting to me because what it means when he says you have such little faith, he's not saying, is your belief weak? He says, don't you know who I am? Don't you really know who I am? If you really had faith, if you really trusted that I am who I said I am, you would not be worried about the boat going down right now. If you really believe that I am God and that I am in control and that I am in the boat with you, that I have not left you, that I have not forsaken you, but I am with you in the midst of the storm, you would have peace because you know who I am and you know you're with me. You know I'm with you. And that relationship, that connection is enough to bring us peace when the crazy hits. Do you have such little faith, he says? Don't you realize who's in the boat with you? I love this. Jesus was not awoken by the storm. He was awoken by the cries of his people. He didn't get up and command the storm to be stilled when he recognized that the storm was raging. He knew the storm was raging. He got up when his people turned their face to him and said, Lord, help. Lord, where are you? Lord, step in. Look. Guys, some of us, we've been so focused on the storms of this world. We've been so focused on the crazy of this world. We've been so focused on the personal struggles, the financial struggles, the relational struggles, the economic struggles, all these things. We've been so focused on the winds and the waves and the storm, and we've spent so much time, you know people like this online, you see it, so much time raging against the storm. And God's waiting for us to turn and begin to call out to him.
Good word.
That when God steps in is when his people, if my people who are called by my name get themselves in a lot of trouble and they're freaking out, that no. If my people who are called by my name will turn from the wicked ways, will repent, will pray, will seek my face, that awakens the heart of God. That awakens the movement of God. That awakens the revival that we've been seeking, not when we scream to the storms, but when we call out to our God.
Yes, yes, yes.
Where is our attention? Where is our heart? Where is our mind? What are you fixing all your time on? Are you focused on the fact that God is in the storm and that he is the deliverance that you've been calling out for? Or are you so focused on the brokenness and the messed upness of the world, of your world, that you feel like you're stuck in a storm and there's no way out? God, where are you? We're going to die. He's like, I'm right here. I've been here the whole time, just waiting. Part of me wonders if he wasn't like faking that he was sleeping, like he's got one eye open. All right, guys, give me time now. All right, it's getting bad. You're gonna call out. Come on. Oh, there it is. All right. Peace. Be still. That's where I wonder about the other boats. The other boats didn't know what Jesus did. All I know is like, it's crazy. It's not. What just happened? In my mind, I think of it like a movie moment, like, in Titanic or something, when they're on the top and the storm stops. They look around and Jesus is like on the keel of the other boat. He's like, peace, be still. They just look over like, oh. I don't know. That's how it works in the movie in my brain. Anyway. Call out to Jesus in the midst of the storm, and that's when we begin to experience the peace. This isn't the only time they struggled with a storm. In Matthew 14, we see a different scenario. This is a whole different time, a whole different season, but we see a similar scenario. It says, immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back in the boat. Once again, Jesus is like, hey, it's a good time for a boat ride. Why don't you guys go this time? You guys go across the river. I'll meet you there. After sending the people home, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Night fell when he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble, far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came towards them. Listen, they had been fighting this storm for a season now. Jesus didn't show up right when that storm showed up. Jesus sent them out, understanding they were going to face that storm. And they were in that storm for a season. Some of you have been in a storm for a season now. The struggle has been there. It's been there for quite some time. And you've been fighting. They've been fighting these winds. They've been fighting these waves. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus comes towards them, walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, again, they were terrified. You would be too. Come on. All right, you're freaking out. You're tired. The storm, the wind, the waves, the crazy. All of a sudden, somebody's walking on the water towards you in the middle of the night. You would be scared too. I know I would. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once, said, "Hey, don't be afraid. Take courage. I'm here." Some of you, that's a word for you this morning. You're fighting. You're battling. Emotionally, you're struggling. And today, Jesus walks out onto your storm, into the midst of your crazy. He says, "Hey, don't be afraid. I'm here. I'm with you." Next verse. And Peter called out to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat. How would you like to be fly on the wall for this one, right? Peter went over the side of the boat, walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified, and he began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith. Why did you doubt me?" They climbed back into the boat. The wind stopped, and the disciples worshipped him. "You really are the Son of God." Two similar stories, but there's some really intriguing differences. One, Jesus stood up in the midst of the storm. When they called out to him, he stood up and he said, "Peace, be still," to the storm. He spoke to the storm and he ended the storm. For some of you today, you call out to Jesus, he's going to step in and he's going to end the storm. He's going to wipe out the storm. He's going to change things in a moment. You're fearful, you're afraid, you're worried, you're struggling. You're going to turn to Jesus, and in a moment, peace. But in this story, Jesus didn't speak to the storm right away. He spoke to his disciples in the middle of the storm. He says, "Yeah, the storm's still raging. The wind's still blowing. The waves are still rocking. The storm's still happening. You, in the middle of the storm, you find peace." Why? Because I'm here. He didn't end the storm. Even in the midst of the crazy, Peter's like, "Okay, if it's you, then ask me to come out." He's like, "Yeah, come out." He steps out. He's walking into the storm. Jesus called Peter into the storm. You get out of the safety of the boat, engage in the storm, step into the storm, step into the waves, step in. Remember, we're not angry, but we're not isolated and fearful and apathetic. Step out into the storm because you're following my voice. Step out into the crazy, come to me. And as long, you know the story, as long as Peter's eyes were locked on Jesus, he walked on top of the waters. So I love that song, "I'll rise above the waves." It's not only possible for Jesus to calm the storm around us, but Jesus calms the storm inside of us, even while the storm rages around. You can be in the midst of very difficult, very hard, incredibly painful circumstances and walk in peace. I don't think that, and some people might disagree with me here, I don't think that it is a proper Christian response to pain to ignore it and pretend like it doesn't happen. I know Christians who, with good intent, they will find themselves sick and they will refuse to admit that they were sick or that they are sick because they feel like it's a lack of faith. I don't think that that's true. That's not what faith means. Faith doesn't mean you ignore the present reality. Faith means that in spite of the present reality, you believe in a higher reality. You believe in something above that. Yes, I am sick. Yes, I am struggling. Yes, I am broke. Yes, my relationships are broken. Yes, the brokenness of the world is a reality. Yes, the disciples are in the storm. Jesus doesn't say to them, just pretend it's not there. He says, no, step into the storm. And let your faith in me rise you above the chaos. And then when Jesus steps into the boat with them, the storm, they find peace. The storm is over. Some of you struggle because your eyes are on the wrong things. Your focus is on the wrong things. You're looking for the approval. You're looking for the control. And Jesus today is saying, hey, I'm in the boat. I'm with you. You can have peace in the midst of the storm. If I could have the worship team come back, we're going to not quite close yet, but we're going to get close here because I want us to have some time at the altars, at our seats at the end today. Because what I want us to do at the end is I want us to take some time and just be with Jesus. There's no way to peace except through Jesus. You won't get peace by hearing someone talk about peace. You won't get peace by believing that it's possible. You won't get peace. The only way you're going to get peace in the midst of the chaos of our culture, peace in the midst of the crazy of your life, is to sit with Jesus. It's to look at him. It's to call out to him. It's to experience again the refreshing, reassuring closeness of Jesus. In Canada, I read this crazy story. In Canada, the winter storms can rise so quickly and so fiercely that a farmer can be in his barn, the snow squall will hit, and when he walks out of the barn, not only can he not see his house, he can't see his hand in front of his face because it's such an intense snow squall. There have been people who have died in their own backyards walking in circles trying to find their house. The storm gets so intense, they have no way to find their way home. And so what they do is they will tie a rope from their house to their barn. And when they go to their barn, they take care of their animals, they take care of what they want to take care of. And when on the way back, they will grab that rope and they will follow that rope through the storm. They cannot see where they're going, they cannot see their destination, they have no idea, but they know that that rope leads them home. Some of you are in the midst of the chaos. You can't see your own face. You've lost your identity. You've lost your sense of who you are. You've lost your peace. You've lost the sense that it's going to be okay. You've lost that sense of home. And you feel like it's just like, I'm not settled. There's that unsettledness. Jesus is the rope that you can hold on to, that you can hand over hand, step by step by step, trusting him, walking through the storm, knowing that he is guaranteed to lead you home, to lead you back to peace. Whether that peace means he calms the storm, or if that peace means he calms you in the middle of the storm. Sometimes I think that Jesus' ability to calm us in the middle of the storm is almost a greater testimony. As much as it's a miracle that he calms the storm, when he calms us in the storm, we become the testimony. We become the ones that stand out. We become the people that others look at and they go, oh, isn't it crazy? The world's falling apart. The news is, wah! And everything is terrible. I'm like, yeah, it's rough. But I'm okay. I'm okay. I know it's going to turn out. God's got this. And they look at us and go, what? How can you be okay? Look what you're going through. How can you be okay? Look what you've dealt with. How can you be okay? Look at the crazy. How? It doesn't make any sense. You should not be okay right now. And we can look at them and say, yeah, well, let me tell you about this man who's in the boat with me.
Right.
Let me tell you where my peace comes from. In this story in Mark, the very next chapter, they land on the other side. And they run into this demoniac who's coming out of the tombs. He's like this crazy man, breaking chains, and nobody can control him. And he's so insane, he lives amongst the tombs. Comes running up to Jesus. And you guys know the story. Jesus casts out the legion of demons. It's interesting to me in that story, and maybe I'll preach on this Sunday. What's interesting to me in that story is that demoniac man, after he was set free, the people of the town came out. They looked at Jesus and they said, get out of here. We don't want anything to do with you. We don't understand. You're a different kind of something, and we don't know what you are. Get out. And they rejected Jesus and they sent him away. And as Jesus was going, the demoniac man, the formerly demoniac man, came to Jesus and said, I want to go with you. Let me go with you. I think this might be the only time in Scripture I remember Jesus ever doing this. He says, no. No, I don't want you to go with me. You go home. You go home and you live different. You go home and you tell people the story. You go home. You love your family. You take care of your people. Next time Jesus' disciples come through that same area, thousands come out to meet him, bringing their sick to be healed. What was the difference between when they kicked Jesus out and when they embraced Jesus? It was one guy who had an encounter with God, who went home, who lived different, who became a testimony to the people around him. You're touched by Jesus. It is a blessing for you. It is a blessing through you to everybody who knows you. Your peace is not just so you feel better. Your peace is so that you become something other than. You become the third way. When the world is burning and dying, you become the third way. That's who we are, church. Bow your heads with me. Jesus is in the boat. He's in the boat. Whatever your storm is, he's in the boat. Your finances are struggling. Jesus is in the boat. Your relationships are broken. He's in there. He's with you. Your job is hard. Or you don't have a job and it's hard. He's with you. You look at the social, political realities of our world, and it seems overwhelming. He's with you. There's peace for you today. We're going to sing this song, and if you'd like to come up here and find a place, we used to call it soaking back in the day. If you'd like to find a place just to come and be with Jesus, I'd like you to do that. Just come find your peace today. If you want to sit there, that's fine. But we're going to sing. If you have that peace, then sing. If you don't have that peace, don't sing. Don't worry about the words. You worry about just turning your attention to Jesus. Say, Lord, I need you today. Can we find peace in the presence of God in this service? If you'd like to come up, please do come up. But wherever you are,